Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. I'm back from my holidays. I'm ready to talk Arsenal with my two boys. Unfortunately, I'm not very well. I've got post-holiday blues and I'm sick. So
Oh
this
wow.
could be a fun podcast. So apologies if I'm sniffling away. But I'm back. I'm very excited to be talking Arsenal. I thought I would have come back to more news, frankly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when I realised sort of about 2-3 weeks before I went away, I was like, I don't think. I mean, it's not my mum's fault for having a birthday on the 14th of July, but she could not have had it in a worse place in terms of
Yeah.
Arsenal news. But actually, been pretty quiet.
Yeah, very, very quiet. I don't think anything's happened to be fair. Except for the half here we go for Calafiori. I haven't got
Mm.
the full here we go yet. So yeah, just waiting on stuff to get done.
Yes.
I feel like at the same token, while we've really cut leaks, Arsenal have always dragged out announcements. Like it's been an Arsenal thing. Like even regardless of whether or not we're doing things and there's links, Arsenal will drag out a transfer. like I feel,
It's going to
you know,
happen.
like we
It's what we do.
like yeah. I mean, we've had it notorious that clubs just get fed up and they announce the players on their own. So it does not shock me that news is slow to come by. But I do think like there's been a lot of really interesting pushes about selling and a lot of interesting conversations to the window that I'm sure we're going to get into later in the podcast about what people would be happy with and what people think is the scope of minimal requirement.
Yeah, we'll come to it straight away. It's Arsenal heritage to drag out announcements, which is it's just what we do. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple. You can get us on Patreon, all that sort of good stuff. So make sure you do all that. But first, there is some links to Mikel Merino. I haven't seen anyone. I think, as Fabrizio said, there's some kind
There's
of stuff.
interest.
There's interest. There's interest. I don't think Ornstein said anything. There's some stuff from some Spanish reporters and stuff. There's no real, sort of really, really concrete stuff, but a lot of sort of murmurings about Marino. We did do a scouting report on Marino, which you can check out on the Cannon podcast on Scouted. You can also check out George and I looking at his clips as well. I don't really want to talk the player because we've kind of spoken about the player and we can maybe come back to the player. But something that's come out is there's a lot of sort of chat in the Arsenal community at the moment, I suppose, around what would kind of be enough this window. And I know George and I have probably fairly converging views on this, but I suppose I want to lay out what I feel first and then get your boys' takes. I think really where I'm at with this is there's a lot of people who are sort of going, okay, if we ended up with a Calafiori Marino window, would that be enough? And I've seen a lot of people saying it's only 2 points to Man City. In terms of fixing our left hand side, that certainly goes a long way to doing it. If you view it as a pod, as the left back, the left central midfielder, and the left winger, you've changed 2 out of the 3, and we can get Martinelli firing again. We're not miles off it. We don't necessarily need to go and spend loads of money. What's the problem? I had someone accuse me of engagement farming. I would go that strong for suggesting that I maybe disagree with this. My feeling, and maybe I'll come to you first, George. My feeling on this is this: maybe Calafiori and Marino summer, and plus maybe something else, a defender or something. I don't, Mikel signing another defender would be enough, right? But I really feel I want to answer as many questions as we possibly can this window. That's my main feeling. You're never ever going to get through. You're never going to be in a place where you have every single question mark answered in a squad. It's never going to happen. But you hope by the end of a window, especially when you're as close to the top as we feel we are, you answer as many questions as you possibly can. And I just don't feel. I know people will disagree with me. I just don't want to be going into next season going, yeah, maybe. I want to be going in going, we have done absolutely every single thing we can. Whether that's feasible is a separate conversation. But there are sort of some people who are going, I think this might be enough. And I'm going, no. But yeah, want your take, George?
Yeah, it's a really complicated topic because I think there's been this new craze in the transfer window where it is, let me repeat what the club have told me. And there's a group of people that are saying, this is what I'm seeing in links, therefore this is the scope of what's possible. And there's that group of people. And then there's probably myself, who personally has never looked at links. I've just looked at what I feel are the holes in the team, who I think could solve those holes. And I give a list of plan A, B, and C. And I've always operated that way. Like even when we discuss Osimhen, when we discuss specific players, I'm always somebody that feels, okay, X trait is missing in the squad. This is X player that could solve X trait. And then I'm going to give you a plan A of really expensive marquee who I really like, a reasonable shout, and then maybe a budget shout so that we can cover our bases here. But this has been a struggle, I think, for the Arsenal fan base. And, what you said is true. But I mean, I always retort when people tell me, is this enough? And the response is, well, we were so close. Do we need goals? Do we need this? Do we need that? My response is always, well, you could go back every season and say, do we even need transfers? We were so close to goals. We just missed out. And yet you wanted signings and you want a level of improvement. What you want is the club to show ambition that it's trying to improve and maximizing its ability. That's what you want to see. You don't need to start and demand, I want Eduardo Camavinga, Jamal Musiala, and I want Erling Haaland to come into my club right now. Okay, like there's that end of the spectrum. Then there is, I can only afford youngsters that are between £10 million. And then we're somewhere in the middle with Mikel Moreno and Calafiore. Now, there is a level of you being able to demand more than £100 million spent after coming off the back of one of your most successful seasons, most successful commercial revenue seasons, and off the back of a July, by the way, that the club have just recruited an extra £75 million in sponsorships from Adidas and Emirates' new sponsorship deals, as well as Soba, which was not on the books last year.
And we're everywhere at Dubai Airport, I'll tell you that. We're absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this idea that we can't capitalize on Arsenal's marketed increase in popularity and not take the next step is something I really push back on.
Yeah. I want to come to you, Bhavs. What George said at the beginning, it's almost like a transfer version of Stockholm Syndrome, where I feel like there's a sort of sense of like, well, if we're only getting links to these sorts of players, that means that it's I think it's bang on what George says, and I wish there was like a term for it. It's almost like we sort of rationalize ourselves to go, oh, well, that makes sense then because of this, and forget all of the things that we said at the beginning of summer going, I was saying it. I think I even said on a podcast, I think we'll spend the most we've ever spent this summer. I probably would say now I can't see that happening, but in terms of a capacity to do so and what I wanted, I haven't changed my position. I now don't think Arsenal will do that. I think we'll probably spend a decent amount, but probably not go and do that. But I haven't changed my position. I think that's what we needed this summer, and I think that's what I would like to see. But yeah, I want to get your take on all that because I think it's a weird way. It just feels like we've sort of rationalized our position.
Yeah, and it's because, as you said, all we can do as fans is go off links because we don't have the connections behind the scenes to see what's happening. And so all you can go off is what you actually have to work off, and the only thing we have is reports. And sometimes, you can get some reliable sources like David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano. They seem to have more reliability behind them. So I get why fans are like that. And, I also feel like whenever you get linked to a player, they're interested that, like, in terms of the fans, just spike straight away. There's more excitement. But when there's no links to that player, fans are like, I'm not quite sure about that guy. Like, we talked about Victor Osimhen all the time. I think this window has been very slow in terms of Arsenal links. But if we were to get a report tomorrow, saying that Arsenal made an offer, I'm guaranteeing there'll be threads, there'll be videos, there'll be scouting reports, excitement around the player. So yeah, it's something that you're starting to notice more and more in the Arsenal fan base, and I can understand why, because fans can only go off what they can see, and sometimes it's just transfer links, and sometimes it's TikToks of car dealerships guys going, there's a guy who's coming from Germany, and fans can work off that. We are desperate for transfer links.
It's funny, and I think you've again hit on something there, like. There is that thing, and I think it is mostly online stuff, although I think it does seek into more sort of traditional media. I suppose the lines are really blurring there, but there is that thing of like, once you get linked, you get threads of why this person is absolutely perfect. And, the reason you do that is because the transfer excitement is kind of monetized through those sort of methods. We do it like thumbnails and titles and stuff to get people interested and sort of to click on your content and stuff before you actually get into the detail of what you're saying. You have to sort of ride the wave of transfer information. I'm sure whatever we call the name of this podcast will be something along those lines. You know what I mean? And, it's the game's the game. But yeah, George, like I don't know. I can't. I want to step back, and I want to step back as a fan and go, what did we really want? And you were sort of alluding to it there. I don't think with a Calafiore Marino summer. No, let me access from a different standpoint. The people that are saying that, so people that are saying that enough, are sort of saying, well, we're close enough. And who are you going to sign? Well, Osman's going to PSG, except he isn't. And we're not going to get this person. We're not going to get that person. We're not going to get that person. So you can say you want a marquee forward, but who do you want? And I look at it from a perspective of, well, there's two things. Firstly, I don't think we've closed the skills gap in the forward areas if we don't go and do something big, in my opinion. So that's a problem to start with. And yes, you can say, well, who are you going to get? But the skills gap is still there. And for me, that problem has to be solved by the intentions going into the summer. You can sit there and say, well, we can't go and sign that person. Fine, but we should have been thinking about that a while ago, looking at the skills gap and going, right, who can we go and get this summer to close that skills gap? That for me is the job of a recruitment department, to go, what do we need to solve in the team and how do we do that? Their remit is to solve that question, to solve how do we go and do that. So I think fans who are sort of saying, well, there's no way of doing it. The recruitment team's job is to solve that question, in my opinion. So if they haven't done that this summer, that to me is worthy of a question, at least a criticism, and worthy of a conversation at least.
Look, part of the problem is again, I don't want to dismiss like people's opinion, because you don't need to win the transfer window to call it a successful window. I mean, I think there is a level of when you're trying to rebuild a team and you're trying to get back to competing, there's almost that increased demand to win the transfer window. But whilst you're already a title challenger, it's very rare that title challengers win a transfer window if you're starting to look at it. So I don't think that's what we're asking for, but what we're asking for is maximizing your ambition. That, I think, is a fair demand. I mean, I look at Manchester City in terms of what they've been able to do over the last 3 to 4 years in terms of their transfer windows, the type of player that they've been able to recruit or the type of resources they've been able to allocate. And it's not a Moreno Calafiori like summer. That's not what they've done in their transfer winning seasons. So there is a spectrum here that we can try to ask for more, but not be unrealistic. And then I sit there and I say, okay, let's say I'm completely off, because that's a possibility. I could be talking off my rocker. That's no problem. I'm always open to that possibility. Let me receive what the club's taken. So I'll take your logic. Let's only receive what links are telling me, right? Okay. So I was told by Mikel Arteta, as of, I believe, or rather The Athletic has been kind of saying murmurings that Arsenal don't expect a major marquee, right? You've all seen those quotes. It's typically that Arsenal are looking at for, players that will assist the squad in kind of a Jorginho or Trossard type of summer, right? What did Mikel Arteta have quotes with, though, on June 4th, I believe, which was talking about having an X factor, quote, end quote, to solve moments.
I've got just to supplement this, I've got the quote. It's essentially it's not from Mikel, it's from senior executives at the club, essentially saying that they felt after the Bayern game, I've got the exact thing, here we go. After Arsenal's elimination against Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals, the feeling among the hierarchy was that the team lacked a certain X factor in attack, something special to unlock defenses on the biggest occasions. And I don't think Mikel has said that directly, but I think he's alluded to that quite a few times.
Let's follow up, because what did he say in his big interview about what we were missing in the box? We were missing box efficiency. So, I mean, we can call it here nor there. We are missing moments and efficiency in those final actions. Guys, I hate to break it to you. That's not Trossard, Jorginho level signings. If you're asking for an X factor and your remit is saying we need certain X factor in moments, and your remit is that we need efficiency in the box, guys, I'm sorry, that's the most expensive player on the market. And you're not asking for goals, you're asking for a certain guarantee of moments, and you're talking about the top echelon of player.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect for me, where what I'm hearing is backing up what I'm demanding. And then I'm not seeing the action that follows that statement. And that's where part of the frustration is. Now, let me close this. It's not end. The transfer window hasn't finished. There is a possibility for us to address all these concerns. But when you're approaching the season on July 23rd and you're asking for a player that delivers moments, that's the longest type of negotiation. It certainly won't be for a transfer that's going to start off the jump ready to go. Regardless of what we do and whether we get a Victor Osimhen, insert your favorite superstar here, if we do it, it will be late. It will be without a proper preseason. And it will be for a player, by the way, who's presumably important, that needs to learn the new style of play. It's very unlikely that I see a player that has done this before. I mean, Mikel Arteta has a very complicated style of play. That's not something that's new to fans. And so it will take several weeks to get into. And, it does come into debate about the people coming in late from preseason, that whole idea about a staged return from our own players and how integration might fall and how that combines with signings. But ultimately, I'll just end on this. I mean, I think that Ricardo Calafiore and Mikel Moreno are brilliant players. I've endorsed them as really positive additions to the squad, and I think that they improve us. All check, check, check. And I think that they all do a good job of fixing an issue on the left-hand side in terms of our fluidity. Do I think that they are the best solution that we could have recruited? No. But I do think that they're a very good addition to that. My biggest annoyance is the one thing that actually Mikel has vocalized of all our traits. Forget what we believe as, podcasters and whatnot on the football. The one thing that Mikel has actually distinctly talked about is box efficiency. And my question is to throw it back to you guys. Who in our squad has the box efficiency? And is it a recruitment need? Because I've had this debate in group chats, and I don't agree with people that say that we are a team filled with people that are efficient in the box. There are a couple players. Trossard is incredibly efficient in the box. I think Martinelli, in form and when played central often enough, can be efficient in the box. Saka, as a whole, can have moments where he's efficient in the box. But if you're asking me, George, do we have a certified box killer? My answer is no. That's a recruitment gap that I've highlighted from the beginning and something that clearly Mikel feels. So do you guys believe we can coach players to become a killer in the box, or is it a recruitment need?
Yeah. And it's like the recruit... Maybe we can, but why not go and definitively answer that question in the market? Mm-hmm. I do want to pick up, before I come to you, Baz, I do want to pick up on something George said, because it's bang on. Look, a dream signing, insert your favorite name here, link comes out tonight and this whole conversation's over and, whatever. Exactly. But my point is more that I'm speaking to those fans who are sort of kind of rationalizing themselves and to go, oh, maybe this is fine. It's like, I don't think it is. I want to sort of get your take on what's been said so far.
No, I totally agree, and I say it like, look, fans are trying to make work what's happening in terms of links wise, because they're trying to make work with reality, So if the reality is, we don't want to try to delude ourselves and say like we're gonna get this big name signing, and we're gonna end up with Moreno and Calafiore, then we have to make it work. And then fans are trying to, you got the fans that are trying to go, okay, well, makes sense, let's try to make it work, and we're gonna be fine next year, and it'll be enough to beat City. But I think, to go above and beyond and get that final 5%, and have that statement signing, it would be amazing. I also the only thing for me is, who is that player going to be? Because that's, I think, the one thing that even fans just don't have is like, okay, cool, if let's just say we had an extra £100 million to spend tomorrow, who do you go spend on? Some fans will go say, let's go and buy a number 8. Some might say a left back, some might say maybe a striker or a left winger. And I think because there's that general confusion, I can sense why there's a bit of uncertainty across the entire Arsenal fan base right now. And plus, as I said, the season started. Like, before we knew it, Euros came past, flashed by, and now here we are in pre-season. So
can I ask you a question, Bhavs? Like, is that linked? Because again, like, people use links as a way to justify their opinion, and I want to push beyond that, because links aren't that. We don't know. We're not in the boardroom. So I think fundamentally, it would be stupid to say, okay, I'm only going to consider links that I see as possible.
But then, I understand with that, but also at the same time, then you have to use your imagination. And fans are scared to use their imagination, because sometimes they have... Because the reality is, they could have this idea of a player, but then it sets themselves up for disappointment, and Arsenal fans hate that feeling. That's what it is. It's the fear from the past. It's the hurt from the past.
It's the fear of failure.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's the fear of failure.
This is the thing. There will 100% be someone who's already commented on this video, and I'm talking to you right now. Okay, well, you can't get Osman because of this, and you can't get Leao because of that, and you can't get Rashford because of this, and you can't get Isak because of that. Okay, that's the recruitment panel's job, is to go and answer those questions. And I genuinely don't mind. Even Nico Williams, I'm beginning to go like, maybe he could go up into that category. Insert your favorite talent here. The recruitment team's job is to answer those questions, is to answer why couldn't we go after an Osman. I don't mind. But there's this sort of this doomer mentality that I think we need to grow out of a little bit.
Look, for me, what it comes down to, right? I'm the last person that can be accused of only having certain players on my list. Like, I have a ton of options. Whenever I give a target, for example, even a striker, in terms of Victor Osimhen, you're talking about Benjamin Sesko, which we tried and we didn't do. Like, if money was the issue and the affordability was the issue, I really struggle to understand why not giving a package to Benjamin Sesko would mean that he would have not gone from Leipzig to Arsenal. I don't know how intent the club was in trying to do that. But like, let's move on behind the names that we were linked, right? If you're talking about your Nico Williams and you're talking about other players, what about Somerville from Leeds, who is a brilliant type of player? You know, when you talk about Davies, it doesn't just have to be Davies. I always talk about Patrick Dorgu from Leeds, who is a feasible option of a similar profile. I mean, this is what clubs do, right? Like, you have a plan A, B, and C in terms of your marquee, your affordable option.
Do you mean
and
Lecce?
Then, huh?
Do you mean Lecce?
Yep, absolutely.
It's another we've got another Ajax.
Yep. But I mean, like, those are very different types of players. But mate, at the end of the day, I can give you prospects and gems to the cows come home. But fundamentally, the question is, what do you need to beat Pep? And the answer isn't to cut corners and to get a prospect. If you were to list the number of managers that have beaten Pep versus the times Pep has beaten them to title challenges, you're talking a landslide. And it is an outlier coach and team and season that is able to beat Pep. Now, if you are unable to do it with the current squad, I fundamentally believe, and this is why I have a push towards marquees and to real men, and why my window did include Osimhen, Davies, that type of player, potentially Onana. What are those players? It wasn't just the traits that I liked. It wasn't just that, guys. It was, I needed men in prime age territory to take the team to the next level. Because for me, this team is brilliant. I have seen times when this team has been a title winner for 8 months. I have seen times, as of last season, for 10 months, we have been title winners. I have seen times when our point totals have deserved to be titles more than they have in the last 10, 15 years. I hear all those arguments. Guys, the point is, we're competing against an alien who doesn't operate on norms, who doesn't operate on what you should be able to do, what is the minimal requirement. That's not who we're facing. Look, if we were facing Klopp, and this is going to sound really disrespectful, but if we were facing a Klopp title challenge, it's very different to a Pep title challenge. If I was facing a Mancini title challenge, it's very different to a Pep title challenge. The demands are very different. And when you're searching for the last 1% to beat one of the last 1% of managers to have ever lived, all signs point towards special players. And do we have enough special players, in your opinion, to beat already the special players that exist at Man City, but also the coach? And I'm struggling with that right now, and I'm struggling with fans in terms of that, because I can deal with a club showing the ambition to do that, but then not reaching it. This whole thing, Babs, that you talk about the fear, disappointment, and the failure. I really resonate with that, but I think that's no way to lead life personally. I can be happy with somebody putting the best effort forward and not reaching the target. What I can't be happy with is the club saying, okay, I am going to do a Jorginho Trossard window. Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, I'm telling you, I need moments to beat Bayern Munich in a semifinal. I need box efficiency, which talks about the most expensive players.
Yeah.
When I see senior players and the coach completely disagreeing with what we're seeing in the window, that's when I start to ask questions and I say, okay, who is right, who is leading this charge, and why have we had such a disconnect? Because otherwise, Mikel should be saying the same thing, and I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, I think there is a disconnect, and I think, if it comes out that Arsenal pushed hard for X player, it didn't happen, or it's about. I think two things, and then Bhavs will come to you, and then I think we should close out on this. I think firstly, we always look ahead to next season and go, well, we'll have this person, we'll have that person, we'll have that. We don't know what's going to happen. Guys, we lost Jurrien Timber the first day of the season and didn't get back to the last day. That happens. We might lose Saka day one. I'm sorry to say it might happen. So don't go into seasons going, well, Martinelli will be better next season and Trossard will be better. Maybe. And if they are, then absolutely brilliant. You'll not find a happier man than me. But we should be pessimists in that regard, going, we need to stockpile talent. And then if we have too many players, that's great. I think also, yeah, it's like it's the question mark thing that I really can't go over. Don't go into a season with, well, maybe that could happen, and maybe that. Go in absolutely guaranteed. And as I keep saying, it's the recruitment team's job to turn those. Oh, but what if that's a wage thing? And would they leave? It's recruitment teams.
I have the perfect analogy. When you have a big test coming up, do you study the night before, or do you try to prepare for the last 2 to 3 weeks in order to do well on the test?
You're asking me?
Well, not what you've done in the past, but like, what is a better strategy? You have a driver's test coming up. Are you opening the book for the very first time the night before, saying, I'll give it a skim?
Does work sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes
you get away with it.
But if I was to ask 9 out of 10 people, they would agree, yeah, that's not the best way to study. I would assume doing the work 2 to 3 weeks before is going to give you the best chance of studying. And I think that's the thing. And, again, I'm not going to be upset with this type of window. I think I'll be like, those are very good players. What I will bemoan is the last part of the window, which is not addressing the box efficiency, which is what Mikel has told me, and which I fundamentally agree. And I can't lie about my opinion that I believe that's enough to beat Pep next season. If I've asked this questions on previous pods, and even when we were talking Sesko or Nico Williams, prospects that I love, by the way, but my biggest retort, if you guys will remember on those, has been, okay, I love them. They're the best prospects in their position. I can give you all the praise that you think because I agree. They're brilliant. Are they enough, in theory, to beat Pep next season? That is something that I'm not sure or confident of saying. So it's an approach mechanism. And if we're not beating Pep next season, and that's not the goal, then my priorities can shift, and I can understand these. And I can understand this more, budget is the wrong word, but more push towards improving squad depth. That I can understand.
Yeah, and you can do both in the summer. Like finally, Bhavs, I think just to close out on this, I do think there's also like last summer when we signed Rice, there's a clear statement of intent there, and I think some people kind of sneer at that, and I'm a bit like, no, that is important. It's also important for players. We underestimate this. A player coming into preseason last time going, wow, okay, Kai Havertz and Declan Rice, let's go.
No, it is amazing, and I think, as fans, we see that as the best way in the transfer window to go and have a great start to the season. And we've seen other teams in the past that have had great windows, and sometimes they get overhyped and then it can fall apart. But especially looking at how Man City operate every single year, maybe not this year specifically, but the fact that they've won titles in the past and they've gone and signed Jack Grealish for £100 million. This team doesn't sleep either, and we've seen how they are last season. They are freaks. They don't drop points in the latter end of the season, so you have to go above and beyond. Is Mikel Moreno and Ricardo Calafuri above and beyond? I don't think so. But also, I am optimistic and I am hopeful, but it's the hope that kills you as an Arsenal fan, and that's what every Arsenal fan still believes to their core. And so rather than hoping and trying to imagine these amazing scenarios, they try to work off what's in front of them right now, and if it's right now Moreno and Calafuri, that is what it is. But I am sure personally that come the latter part of this window, there will be some level of, I guess, a transfer bomber, or something will happen where fans will get excited because I think Arsenal will make a move as well. And I'm sure they are trying as well, whether it's a Nico Williams or not. I think I would personally prefer a more ready-made player as well because it's about next season. Fans talk about we need to win a title, The likes of Sesko and Williams would have been great for 2-3 years beyond that. But next year, can they give us that extra few percent right now straight away? And that's the question. So yeah, look, we'll see what happens, but I'm sure if a transfer bomber comes around, then a lot of fans will be excited.
So do you think it's also unfair to the players that you recruit that is the expectation if it's not them? Like, for example, look at Calafiori, who we know, just to transition to somebody that we know that's coming in. We've talked about how brilliant we feel the ceiling is, by the way. He's also very raw. You're not getting a complete player. And is it unfair that because you feel that you haven't done enough in the transfer window, you then expect the people that you have come in to have a different expectation? And that could even lead into Moreno. Like, I'm seeing people online, right, that haven't necessarily watched him, but are looking over the statistics, and I'm sorry, making an opinion on Mikel Moreno's ability because they've seen a certain passing completion percent that isn't up to ideal, and then looking at the overall radar of a player and then saying, okay, well, how does that translate to the Premier League? And do they even have the capability? And it's leading to a lot of misconceptions on the player. And then it leads to questions like, is this enough? Are we now recruiting somebody that needs to be Shaka to succeed? And then it's like, well, okay, that's unfair on the player if you're projecting your annoyance at the window.
It puts different demands on the players. Lads, say it with me. Mikel Merino.
Marino.
Commenters, I tried. Let's move forward to different conversation. I saw that this is what happens on the way. George gets on his skull candies and starts mispronouncing names. So let's move forward. So the latest update we have about Chido Obi is from Fabrizio Romano. It says Man United want to close Chido Obi Martin deal and put Manchester United want to close Chido Obi Martin deal and pushing to get it sealed as soon as possible. Understand Chido will make his final decision in the next hours and days after visiting several clubs in the UK and Germany. It's considered imminent. Bayern, Newcastle, Monaco, Frankfurt also made contact. Man City aren't in the race, and he visited Man United and I think he got turned around by Sir Alex Ferguson or whatever. Whatever they do over there.
Rio without a shirt made a call.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Mate, come over. So yeah, we obviously absolutely hate the club for this happening. To be clear, he hasn't yet decided to leave. I think some people have sort of jumped.
I think his contract has expired, or his scholarships expired.
So what it is you can't, like, they're always in limbo because your scholarship terms are up to a certain point, and that's already passed like a long time ago. This wasn't even recent, right? And so when you take in new scholars, like as of this season, you talk about some of the new wingers that we got. There was some Croatian talent that was like a new scholar that came in. They released lists, and that deadline was July 16th in terms of who you have to announce your scholars to be. And obviously, because he's not been announced, that normally happens when people are leaving. And so now if he's going to maybe Manchester United, for example, that will be a delayed process. Even Rio Nagoma from Chelsea will be one, because you have to do training ground compensation. That's just a legal thing. But yeah, I think effectively he is gone, only because you would have seen him sign on with the new scholars typically. At that point.
My point being that it's not, it's 99% done, but it's not totally done.
I got a question for you guys if you want to start, because I've obviously got opinions on it, but I'd like to ask, at what point for you guys is it a problem? And we shouldn't highlight Chido Obi, because I ironically think that Arsenal did everything right in this very specific scenario.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you, at what point is it enough? Because we've had debates with like brilliant people. We had that brilliant Academy pod, and I think the big line has always been from people that have been on the other end of the spectrum, like, in the future or next season or in 6 months, I'm going to reevaluate and ask more of Mikel. Where for you guys is the line? Does it rest with Amari Hutchinson? Does it rest with Mario Cozier-Dewberry? Does it rest with Chido Obi? When will it be a problem that we do have to discuss a little bit more deeply? Because I think isolated cases isn't fair, but I would like to present a pattern, and respectfully, just everybody take it in for a second and don't get too angry. But when you have Amari Hutchinson, you have Ruel Walters, you have a Mario Cozier-Dewberry, you have Carl Hein, who we had to sell last minute, Arthur Okonkwo. This season, I'm going to put some names. Charlie Patino, not an unknown youngster, not somebody that we couldn't have sold. He's going into the last year of his contract. 2 players on the list right now that are academy youth that have traveled to the US are in the last year of their contract. Salah Adin, Omar Rekik. And there are others, by the way, that are also in their last year, in terms of Keon Edwards, who has gone to Leyton Orient, who was a significant loan last year. Another one of value going into the last year of the contract. So we've now got another group of 5 players that are entering the last year of their contract with value next year. At what point, like, we've now got 2 years in a row with significant players that have gone out to first team level environments. Omar Rekik, by the way, guys, has had a serious loan. Salah Ad-Din had a serious injury, but he was somebody that was looked for a serious first team loan. We're not talking talents that people have never heard of. That's not the talent. Where do you guys think is the line?
I think maybe the players that we have right now that are most hyped up, like Mazu Skelly, Ifan Waneri, if they were to depart Arsenal and they maybe come out and say, look, the reason why I'm leaving Arsenal is because I'm not getting opportunities.
Fall in that category, though?
I think with Chido, because he was so young, like 15, 16 when he broke through in terms of all the news articles. Maybe not quite, but the players that we have seen involved with the first team squad, the players that you like, if you ask any Arsenal fan right now, which two youngsters do you think will be guaranteed part of the first team in the next 10 years? They'll say Miles Lewis-Skelly for Ranieri. If either of those two players end up leaving because they don't believe Arsenal's the best place for their future, then I think fans will there will be a line drawn for sure. But for some fans, you're right, Cheeto is the player because they've seen the goal scoring record, they've seen all the stats come out, and they're seeing him go to potentially a rival, and they're going, look, how does that work out? So for a lot of people, it'll be different. But for me personally, yeah, I think if I see Ethan and Miles maybe struggle to break in the next 2-3 years, then I think that will be my personal line.
This is so hard to analyze. I think you kind of, because you can get stuck between the micro and the macro. You could get, you could look at the pattern recognition. You can go into each individual case. It's really difficult to know which angle to take. I think what I feel is ultimately a first team manager's job is to win games. It's to win matches of football, right? So the primary job. Let's not. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Maybe they would, but I think I'm sure there are some people out there.
What you're saying is
you want to lose,
or you want to win at all costs. You want to.
Oh God, you want to win games of football?
So let's take that off the table. We're having a different conversation to the primary job of the manager, right? How you can support that, of course, I think we've kind of established. I think everyone really accepts that there's a way to go here. I think then you get into more micro conversations. I think Chido Obi specifically, Georgia. I think you can only go so far with a young player. It's from everything we know, and again, we always have to remember working with scraps of information. From everything we know that's happened with Chido Obi, it sounds like we did everything to involve him. Mikel had face-to-face talks with him. He was involved way above his age group. There was conversations. Mikel's spoken about him. I'm sure there's loads of things we don't know. That's it. So I don't want to get too attached to Chido Obi, but what I think Chido Obi is a name similar to Ethan and similar to kind of what Bhavs was saying. It's similar to Miles Lewis-Skelly. Amari Hutchinson was kind of getting there. This will happen with someone like a Max Dowman. They kind of become emblematic of something where maybe they as an individual aren't necessarily a massive issue, but they're emblematic of a wider problem. And part of the issue is we're all so invested in Arsenal, right? I shouldn't know who Max Dowman is. I shouldn't. Like objectively, and everyone listening to this will know who Max Dowman is, or most people will. We shouldn't know who a U14 player is at Arsenal. So then when their individual cases go wrong or right or whatever it might be, we then see it as kind of emblematic of a wider issue at Arsenal. And we get so attached to these individuals that one case is seen as, well, that's it. And, this is the problem at Arsenal. And we sort of hold these hopes for someone because we've seen them on our Twitter feeds for 5, 6, with Max Down, it'll be 10 years at some point. Charlie Patuna, how long have we heard that name? And it's a kind of death by 1,000 cuts where you feel like everyone's going, over and over and over again. There's another player gone. And it's very hard to step back and go, what's the purpose of the manager, which we've discussed, but also what's the purpose of the academy? Most talents won't work out. And so it's very difficult to know how concerned we should be.
Can I contextualize some of that? Because of those departures that have left, how many have gone to a top 5 league? How many are going within the Premier League? I think that's an important context because ultimately it comes down to the rate of talent. If you don't believe that they are talented, then you're not worried. If you don't believe that these are talents that Arsenal could have used or Arsenal could have maximized value because where did they go? How is their careers going now? That mentality, then yeah, you don't believe it's a problem. But mate, of those that have left on freeze, how many have gone to Premier League or Championship level clubs? And that's the frustration.
I agree. I'm being a centrist dad, as is my want. I'm basically making the point that you can take multiple different angles on this, and I completely hear your angle on it. I just think there will also be people who say most talent doesn't work out. You can't do that. It's just another talent that most academies 99%, and you could take that view. My point is really it's very difficult to have a perspective, really, which isn't very good for podcasting. But go on, Bhavs.
No, I also feel like you can kind of pick your route in terms of how you want to use your academy. You know, you could use the Barcelona route, who throughout the last 20 years have produced so many young players, and it's, you know, look at Yamal now. You know, they can produce some high quality players and straight into the first team. You could do the Chelsea route as well, Man City, where, you know, they don't always break into the first team. You learn them out a few times, gain market value, and make insanely high profit in terms of FFP as well. But as fans, I guess we're kind of conflicted as well because we want to be the Real Madrid. You know, where we maybe not produce the best talent, but we go and sign the best talent. And if that's our priority, then, you know, you have to. I think as fans, if we're not going to have those players break into the first team, just if a bit more, we feel a bit more sensible in how we, you know, give them contracts and stuff and loan them out to maximize the market value. I don't think fans will be against this. Just right now, it's a bit confusing because we're seeing so many youngsters leave on free transfers, and you know, them even talking about they don't see Arsenal as the best pathway. You know, I think the example was Kozia Dubry, where they're talking about him not seeing Arsenal as his best development pathway, and maybe if we'd learned him out a few times, the Premier League clubs, and showed him that, and then, no, maybe not make it to the first team, but sold him now, could have made maybe 15, 20 million pounds for that.
Yeah, I think if you take the isolated case approach, which is what a lot of people that detract go with, you're going to get caught in the weeds. And for me, it's just a data point, right? Like, so you can never get hugely upset at a player leaving, right? That's why for me, Cheeto Obi, and I do maintain, I think Arsenal did everything possible, by the way. Like, there has to be a line that you can't cave into a youngster's demands no matter what. And, you know, for Arsenal, that was Ethan. Ethan has set the boundary in terms of what we're okay with on a wage packet and a financial level, right? That is something that we can't go above. By the way, we've done that with Bukayo Saka. So I'm not upset that if a player rejects that level and we've offered him an integration pathway, Mikel has talked to him, he's gone into first team training. He's actually been fast tracked at every age group. Arsenal didn't hold him back. So in that individual case, that's a player that just wants more, and that's fine. Those happen, right? So you can never get upset at that specific context. That's why I like to look at trends. That's why I think ultimately push is going to come to shove that we're going to have to start asking questions. And I do believe next year, and I don't want to say this is true because we haven't confirmed it, but I do believe we're going to see another 3 to 4 players in the Omar Rekik, Salah Dean, Charlie Patino, Keon Edwards group that we're 100% not getting value because they're in the last year of their contract. So that's already a given, but there will be several that will go for freeze again. And players that have gone to first team environments. And that'll be the second year in a row where for me, it's a little bit worse because you're assuming that the changes that we've made back in January, October, in terms of Phil Cohen, who has been assigned and has been in the job for now over 8 months at this point, he can't be responsible for them getting into the last year of their contract, but he can be responsible for getting value. Even if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 million pounds or being sent away, we can do a better job at that. And I will follow up with how many academy loans have we sorted to date with the transfer window going with multiple players that need loans, by the way. They're not significant. So the loan
we've got
question,
Jack Henry Francis out at Sligo Rovers, wherever it is.
well, there you go. And that's really
Sligo
something that we're going to
Rovers.
see. So that's been a want. And then I'm going to end on a positive because there has been a positive. You look at the rotation and the change that we've seen in the goalkeeping department in terms of our ability to purge talent that we felt was not good enough and then replace with really good talent in terms of Tommy Setford, in terms of Nygaard, who has come in terms of revamping that U21, U18 level of talent. Brilliant. Like, we did a great job of removing Ovi Ejihiri. We did a great job about removing Okonkwo. So we've replaced them with talents that we believe in the moment could be better. No problem. That's a brilliant rebuild of a particular position. I need to see that across the space of the academy better. And the question, that's not really a Mikel point too. And I think that's what gets conflated, right? People assume when you say bad academy, that means bad Mikel. No, like, the Mikel point is just minutes, but actually I don't think seeing, by the way, 100 minutes from Ethan Maneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly means I'm no longer upset at the way that we handle the academy in terms of maximizing value. And that maybe is where, I guess, the anger, or not even the anger, but like the questions and the critique and the self-appraisal should go to those in charge, which is Per Mertesacker, Phil Cohen, people that are in charge of those departments right now that are new. I'd like to see change. And at what point can you demand change? Is it a year in the job, 2 years in the job? Is it since 2018? Like, how far back do we go?
Yeah. I think just to close on this, because I think we want to get on some other stuff. I think it's hard. Obviously, George, you think a lot about this sort of stuff, and it's completely understandable. And I think you're not wrong in what you're saying, but I think there are people, and I would probably understand those people as well, who would say, "Mate, we're winning games." And you could take that perspective. It's sort of one of those things where it's also the thing is the babushka dolls. So you've got a problem with this babushka doll. It doesn't negate this problem with the babushka doll, but because it's so many layers deep, it's like how much of a problem it is hard to kind of contextualize. I find I think and I actually don't disagree with anything. I think there are inefficiencies in the academy. I think what you're saying about Phil Cohen is bang on in terms of what his responsibilities. It's just knowing how big it is in the sort of the scale of Arsenal's problems is always the thing I want to try and sort of
Can
understand.
I try it? I'll just ask a question. I'm not going to spark another convo on it. How does that relate if your reasons in a PSR environment about not going for PSRs can stop you from going for top talent because you're unable to provide enough sales and pure profit sales to then go the extra mile? If your problem is maybe value and not necessarily integration, how does that translate if maybe the club is saying they need X factor, but then Calafiore and Moreno type of summers are your point?
Who? I would argue that that's less of an academy issue and more of a Cole club issue because you're not gonna make okay. You sell Ovi Ejaheri for £1 million. Is that gonna fund the Osman deal? Do you know what I mean? Like it's,
No.
I think like it's a complicated symbiotic system.
But if you lose 20 to 30 million pounds and an Amari Hutchinson for 20 million, who you've built,
then we're talking about how many of those are there. I think it's a complicated one, but we'll I think we should have another academy conversation at some point if people can stomach it. Let's move on to this. So we got a quote from Mikel about sort of integration of players back. So I think there's 4 groups, I think I'm correct in saying, in terms of the reintegration. There's people who weren't at the Euros at all, then people who were at the Euros but only got to the group stage or something. I think it's 4 groups. So he was asked in his sort of pre-Bournemouth press conference, "We're nearly going to have football back, lads. Here we go, 3 a.m. There's a very well thought out plan of integration. That's true. That's true. There's a very well thought out plan of integration, but we cannot expect them to go from sunbeds to training at 100 miles per hour. He was also asked about Declan Rice and Saka, essentially how, is there a risk of them potentially not being available for the start of the season? He seemed to downplay that. But Bhavs, I want to ask you, is there a world where you'd be happy or you'd be okay with, let's say, Bukayo Saka missing the first 2 games let me put a scenario 2, first 2 games of the Premier League season, if it meant he had a full proper recovery this summer? Would you view that as poor management? Would you view that as mismanagement? Mikel said that, the texts that he's had from players and they seem to be, raring to go. I also want to throw into this that, like, I think it's okay for us to look at like the likes of Martin Odegaard and Ben White and Gabriel Jesus, the guys who didn't go away this summer, and say, we need you in this early season, while Rice and Saka and, Saliba and so on, who got far on the Euros, and these players who played so many minutes, are recovering and may not be at their absolute best. I think it's okay to look at those players and say, we need you to step up early, and not put so much pressure on those guys. But yeah, I want to get your take on the situation.
No, I agree in the sense of, look, I'm also excited to see how those players perform with that level of pressure, because they are high quality players, and the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Jesus specifically, having had the whole summer free, no Copa America, chance to recover, look sharper as well. I'm expecting a good start to the season because of the quality we have now. We're not talking of very poor caliber players. We're talking of the likes of Jesus and Ben White and Odegaard. These are first team quality players that I trust them to take over as well, and ask us to win games at the start of the year. We do have a difficult start. There are a lot of tough away games in there, but the likes of Saka and Carl, I'm sure will want to get back into it as soon as possible. And so you have to control that excitement though. See it as active recovery. Allow them to give them the chance to properly recover, even if they don't want to. And then come, because it'll be a long season anyways. We know that. The likes of Champions League, maybe you got far in the Carabao Cup, you got FA Cup as well. If we want to win every single trophy, which every fan wants to, I think we have to manage them properly. And sometimes maybe it's doing something that players don't want to do, but the manager knows is best for them.
I think it might be about managing minutes and, sticking with you, Bavs. Like, I think I think I'd be okay. I mean, as long as we're winning games, it's always the thing, isn't it? I think I'd
That's
be
all
okay.
it is. That's all it is. Yeah.
With a Saka playing 60 minutes for the first couple of weeks. Like I think it's okay. And I think we have to get to a point in the squad building and how we manage the squad this summer where we allow for that. We can't, we've already got more games again next season. We can't expect Bukayo Saka to do what he does for the next 5-10 years. We have to start finding different ways. Declan Rice, I mean, he looked absolutely out on his feet at the Euros. Can we expect him to come back and be available for the 2 Emirates Cup games and play 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes? I just don't think we can. So I think we have to think about the beginning of the season and say, okay, where's the important players? Where they're going to step up? Can we manage minutes and stuff? I think we need to think about that carefully.
And we have the trust as well. The likes of Fabio Vieira and co, players that we know have enough quality to break into the first team and play a part. But you have to trust them as well. And we saw it in parts last year with Jakub Kiwior, where Mikel maybe by force had to trust him, and he worked out. And throw these players in what might look like the deep end to them, but they have enough quality to go and thrive. We're not talking the likes of Cedric and Rob Holding anymore. These are players that have quality that we haven't even seen yet, maybe not platformed correctly, but if they're given a chance, it could be a great chance for Fabio Vieira. Let's just say if he has to start as a right winger to see how he can thrive there, or the likes of Gabriel Jesus. So take that and allow them to thrive in that opportunity.
I'm quite excited about Jesus.
Yeah, I am as well. If we can get that 22, 23 Jesus, we are cooking something nice.
I've got a weird feeling about it. Did you see the quote, George, about I can't remember if it was the players or the manager. Someone said that people within Arsenal see him at his best.
Team losing ticks.
That was it. See him as a top 5 striker in the world. I was like, do they? But I mean, at his best.
22, 23 Jesus, early part of the year. I mean, that player was something else. Maybe not top 5 in the world as a centre forward, but just watching him play and the level of excitement and entertainment, even live as well in person. I mean, he's a very, very good, he was a fantastic player to watch then. So if we get that confident, free-flowing Jesus, then I don't think it's out of bounds to even say that.
I mean, he is somebody that provides moments, right?
Like, yeah, he does. In big games as well. Look at Bayern last year.
Yeah, like he's a player that could. I think him and Emile Smith-Rowe were my 2 players that I feel that in preseason would show well. And I think that I'm demanding a lot from them. Also from Thomas Partey. No, we don't want to say that, but that's an experienced player that hasn't given us enough. Also from Tomiyasu, who we've already seen a little bit of the first inability to be fit from. Like, I'm looking at, when you were talking about players like Ben White, I'm looking at the experience in the squad who haven't played and have been in preseason to take us to the next level. Yeah. And, people like Fabio Vieira are definitely value that you want to get more out of, right? So, I mean, look, preseason, for as much as we bemoan the fact that starters aren't there, this is a chance for the squad to step up and lay their claim. And, they should look at it as a chance of saying, listen, I'm going to keep the starters out. That has to be the mentality that they have. Jesus wasn't a starter last season. He just wasn't. And, he's got to come in with the mentality of my Arsenal career is on the line. And I don't want this to become another Manchester City.
100%. And it's, and I think we're at a bit of a crossroads. I think we've gone down a path with Zinchenko. I just feel Jesus we're a little bit further back up the track. I'm just looking at the ages here as well. We've always spoken about this as a young team and so on and so forth. Jesus is 27, Trossard's 29, Vieira's 24, Smith-Rowe's 23. You've got Partey and Jorginho, obviously, in their 30s. Ben White's 26. These guys that we're looking at in preseason to sort of pull us through this, while we maybe don't, the Salibas and the Sakas and the Rices are building themselves up. These aren't kids, so I don't. That's not an excuse anymore.
It's very important to say that they've played with Mikel Arteta for a long time as well. So the likes of Saka and Rice, might not get a full pre-season, but come the first game back, they know exactly where to be, and they've done it so many times in training. It's all automatic in their minds now. If these were talking about new signings, then I think I'd be a bit more concerned about adaptation. But because they're so used to working on the Mikel, I actually have no concerns whatsoever. Yeah,
I think as long, and look, I mean, the fitness people there, guys, I always make this point, we are woefully
No, I know more. I know more than the fitness
doctors. Doctors need to learn from me.
they've got scans that measure your bone density and your exact fat percentage.
So
I
have I.
think.
Oh, listen. That Arsenal training ground has some of the most maddest things I've ever seen. They've
I
got
think
chambers
from
they're sleeping for like an hour with there's like no, is it oxygen? It's like no, obviously you need oxygen. There's something else in there, but yeah,
I think sleeping for an hour with no oxygen
yeah. You that might not be the
could
best
be
for
a
your recovery.
concern.
but I guess my point is like there's medical like from a period of like making sure that they're not coming back undercooked. I can
Mhm.
confidently say that Arsenal will be able to do that. I think Bavs makes a really good point, though. I actually don't fear at this point in the project with players that have played under Mikel for 2 to 3 years, and even Rice, who has been very recent, that at least has played pretty much every game, and was such an integral member. Like the level of adaptation to new things, to new tweaks, wouldn't be crazy because they've got that mindset. You're looking at people like Maresca at Chelsea. You're looking at people. Potentially Ten Hag if he's going to change his ideas, but people at the start of a rebuild that demand about getting your signings in early may apply a little bit more to people's projects who are newer. Maybe people's projects that are a little bit later, you can afford some of those delays. But yeah, new signings will have that same thing. And I think Calafiore, for example, will fall into that new category, who will see how far and how quick he's able to adapt. But I think from the staged recruitment, I actually would go one step further, Alex, and I would demand this. I think this should be looked at Mikel's first opportunity for squad management. And if we don't rotate, I would get worried for the rest of the season because this season is long. And, it's not just the fact that they're coming late from a Euros, mate. Like for me, in the course of a season, there's periods where Ben White was playing on one leg. There were periods where Bukayo Saka was absolutely too tired and we played him anyways. There needs to be and there needed to be a better squad management and rotation policy throughout the season. Arsenal still had more starters playing for them than even Manchester City did in 80% of available minutes. And that was a problem for me last season. I think we needed better rotation. So I think this is the first step that we could afford it. And I'd like to see it from Mikel. And I'd like to see him trust more people in this first step. And it's going to be an even bigger chance for me because these first 10 to 15 games, mate, they're tough. I actually think that they define the season to me. If I go back and I look at the schedule, our first 10 away games proportionally have the hardest tests. So we're going to be tested early. And I think this is where we could lose the league if we do lose it. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see rotation and I'd like to see people step up.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for people, which is exciting. Let's finish with this. Kind of two outgoings, really, both on Smith Rowe and Nketiah. Nketiah, I think the latest news we have from someone fairly reliable is James Bench, who says Marseille in talks with Arsenal over Eddie Nketiah, who they are looking to take on loan. Most people reporting that it is an obligation. Some people saying they're not sure, but they keep saying it is an obligation to buy. I imagine that's something to do with they have paid for Mason Greenwood up front, so I think that's probably why they're looking to take Smith Rowe on an obligation. Yeah, I mean, there's not loads to say on this. I mean, we need to sort of wait to see how it pans out. I would be fairly happy with that as a deal. I don't know. I haven't actually seen a price being reported yet. I don't know. But if this sort of develops, obviously we'll talk more about it. But sort of in principle, Bhavs, will come to you first. I think this feels like the right move for Eddie and the right move for us.
I think it's the right move for Eddie specifically, going to go into a different league where he can thrive in Liga straight away and make a name there. For Arsenal, I think as a club, in a more greedy perspective, I would have liked more Premier League clubs trying to make a move for him because they've got more money to pay up front, and they can go make a bigger fee right now. But I think in terms of Nketiah himself, I was looking at his stats and, he's 25 now and he's never had a single campaign where he scored more than 10 league goals. And it's because his loan spells were very few and far between. Maybe one spell at Leeds, and that was about it. And so, yeah, I think it's a fantastic time for him to move right now as well. And also, I think it guarantees that Arsenal will sign a forward then if he does go, because we have to at that point. And if Emil goes as well. But I think the fee might be £30 million, and if that's the case, then I'm happy to say that.
Yep. And on Smith Rowe, there was reports from Kai Kainak in Football London who said the club do not want Emil Smith Rowe to go, despite his reluctance to play him in recent seasons. Mikel Arteta is a key driver of this stance. We've had a lot of reports about Mikel still being in love with Smith Rowe. They also gave him the captain's armband in a recent behind closed doors friendly, which is really the kiss of death.
And he scored, to be fair.
I feel that's a line that Arsenal want the media to have. Am I being too cynical, George?
I think so. I mean, but on one level, like it has to be a balance, right? Like I think there is a fee that you can't say you won't consider, and it's approaching that. I think 30 million pounds is nothing, but the fact that we've rejected it kind of shows. And, anything above 35 million pounds, you have to sit there, honestly, no matter how much you love the player, me included, that I wouldn't consider it is lunacy. Like I would consider it. My problem is, I retort always, okay, who's the replacement? And I have no problem with the name, really don't. But I don't find it untrue that I think Mikel loves Emil Smith Rowe. And I think that there are far more players on the list that you would sell before Emil Smith Rowe. I believe all of those things are true. But I mean, if Fulham or somebody comes in with a 40 million pound bid, you're sitting there saying, well, okay, well, respectfully, sorry for the word, like shit, like what do I do with that? And how do I replace that? And is it feasible? Does it make sense? You have to ask those questions. If you're not, because selling good means selling when you don't want to. That fundamentally is a fact that you have to accept. And that has to apply to every player in the squad. So I'm okay having the conversation, but I will always follow up with, okay, then give me your feasible solution that you've actually replaced and replaced well. Because one thing I do push back on, I'm not selling for no reason. Like he's
No, you have to replace him.
valuable, right?
Yeah, you have to replace him. I will say it would be a great move for him to move to Crystal Palace. To go and work under Oliver Glasner and also next to Eberechi as well. I think he'd be a great fit for him as well. And I think also for himself personally, is he ever going to be a guaranteed starter at Arsenal ever again? I'm not sure of it right now, and he has to prove that to me. But in terms of himself, I think going to Palace and being one of their stars straight would be amazing for him. But in terms of replacements, I'm sure we talked about Eze to Arsenal. But the more I think about Desiree Doué as well, and I'm seeing George's shouts on X about him playing as an inside number 8 as well. But the quality there and the talent there, I think is something I would like to take. But we'll see how Mikel wants to maneuver that around. But if we let Emil go, we have to sign another midfielder as well.
So he's going, for example, but he also shows you the talent level. He, for example, talent I love and brilliant, Bayern have a 55 million euro bid rejected. Like we're talking about a big type of replacement.
Of course. Now it can't be 30 mil for 30 mil. No chance.
Desire do. Good play. We'll finish there. Pleasure, lads, as always. I
think Desiree Doué is the first player I've pronounced correctly.
I was going to say that's actually
it might be the only play you've ever pronounced.
But to be fair, he is French, and Canadians are basically French, so don't they?
Can you speak French, George?
Un peu.
What?
Lumpa?
No, a little bit. We say un petit peu.
Oh yeah, no,
no, we don't.
A little, okay. Guys, not.
He plays for Senegal. Pleasure as always.
Scout report.
We've got a scout report going out about him. We'll be back with other pods later in the week. Instant reaction for the Bournemouth game, anyone? We actually have some football that we're going to be able to watch. That was a joke, to be clear. We have a game, unless that we'll be able to watch on Wednesday night. Is it? Bhavs, you going to be there?
I believe it's Wednesday. No, I'm not going to that game, but I am going to Man United, which is on, I believe, Saturday or Sunday.
How exciting! Who's in the house with you?
The big six. So you got Saeed, you got Turkish, you got all the guys.
All the guys.
It was quite eventful last night.
Yes, we'll be back with some sort of pods later in the week. I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing. We need to talk about that now, don't we? But yeah, pleasure as always, lads. Thank you. Thanks for listening to us on Spotify, on Apple. Subscribe to our Patreon because George just demonetized us using the S word. And thanks as always. We'll see you very soon. Thanks for keeping. I'm out of practice. What is it? Thanks for watching the Cannon Podcast, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Peace.